Hello, my Bill 5000 Nation. How's everyone doing today? Hopefully, everyone's having a great day. If not, hope it gets better from here. We are back with another MrBallen video. That's right. This one is titled Top 3 Places You Can't Go, People Who Went Anyways, Part 25. Now, this was requested by a subscriber a long time ago, and I am so sorry, my friend. I went stupid. That's all I can say. I'm sorry. I am so sorry for your wait. But we are here, and for last Friday's MrBallen, I recorded it, everything was fine. I edited it, everything was fine. I uploaded it to YouTube, everything was fine. I went to premiere it Friday, and the intro had sound. The middle, the whole where me and MrBallen actually interact, there was no sound. And then my outro had sound, which makes no sense. How that's going to have sound? That's not. I would literally have to go in and turn the sound off. So I don't know. All I know is it worked when I put it up, and then whenever I went to actually premiere it, it had no sound, and I was in the middle of speaking with Not So Sweet Stevia, and I realized that it wasn't working. I tried to fix it, and as soon as I tried to fix it, it all went fuckered in a bad way. So I am very sorry, Not So Sweet Stevia. I did not get to finish chatting with you in the live chat. I really enjoy chatting with all my people. I really do, and I do apologize. And I will do my damnedest to make sure that won't happen again. But I make no promises or guarantees. It's you two people. All right. All that aside, I'm excited to get into today's story. Go ahead, turn them lights down low, put on something comfy, cup with someone special. Oh, let's see where we shouldn't have went.
Today we're going to look at 3 places you can't go and people who went there anyways. But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do and we upload 2 or 3 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, the next time the like button asks you to be a reference.
Oh, and I will re-record the MrBallen video that got messed up. I will just have to wait a little bit. That I have ADHD. It doesn't take long for me to forget. Like, I really honestly don't even remember what it was about now. I have over 522 videos on my channel. I couldn't tell you what I've reacted to and what I haven't. They all start to run together after a while. Like, I'll be watching them and I'm like, haven't I reacted to this? And then it's like, no, I've reacted to it on another channel. So I will end up reacting to it again. Just give me a little bit of time to make sure it's completely out of my old cranium up there.
On their job application, say yes, and when the company calls you, proceed to tell them how unqualified and terrible the like button is. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories.
But honestly, I mean, I can't say I haven't done it. Me and my cousin was going after the same job. They called me and I was like, nah, he's a dumbass. Motherfucker still got the job over me. It just pissed me off. Behind the partition.
On Friday, August 21st, 2020, 58-year-old Aristides Polino was driving back to his home in Miami, Florida in his police SUV after completing a midnight shift. Aristides was a 25-year veteran of the Miami police force, and over the last 2+ decades, he had routinely done midnight shifts, so this was nothing new. When he got to his house, he parked his SUV in the driveway, and like always, he went right into his house. He didn't talk to his wife Clara or his son. He just went straight up to his bedroom and immediately fell asleep. About 4 hours later, at 5 p.m., Aristides woke up, and he expected to hear his wife's voice somewhere in the house. So when he didn't, and the house was just totally silent, something told him that something was off. So he climbed out of bed, he put on his clothes, and he went downstairs to look for his wife. When he got down to the living room, he saw his son sitting on the couch, but he didn't see his wife. And so he asked his son, hey, have you seen your mom? And he would say, no, I haven't seen her. But sensing on his dad's face that something was wrong, he said, hey, I'll help you look for mom. And so the two men began searching the house, yelling out for Clara, and Aristides began calling his wife, but she wasn't picking up. And after several minutes, the two men reconvened in the living room, and they started going over whether or not she had told them about some appointment that day, and that would explain why she wasn't in the house. But after talking about it, they decided that she didn't.
Did someone kidnap her? Like, did he fuck with someone or arrest someone? They came after his family?
Have any appointments, and she should be home right now. And so the men decided.
No, places you can't go, but people anyways. Did he leave a prisoner in the back of his car and he get out and took her? No.
That, maybe she went outside and she's talking to a neighbor, or, she went for a walk and she's talking to somebody on the road. And so they decided they would go outside and search the outside of the property. When they got outside, Aristides went towards the back of the property and his son went towards the front, down towards the driveway. And so as Aristides is making his way around the back of the property, he hears his son scream out for help. Aristides comes running back around the property and he sees his son standing in the driveway with the door of his police SUV wide open. 4 hours earlier, after Aristides came home, he parked his police SUV right in the driveway like he always did, and for some reason he left the car unlocked. And so he goes in the house and he falls asleep. And while he was sleeping, Clara, who was home, she exited the house and walked down the driveway to his SUV. She opened up the door and went inside. It's believed she was looking for something, although we don't know what she was looking for. And while she was in the back of his car, fishing around for whatever it was she was looking for.
She was in the back? That motherfucker locked her in there. Like, not him, but like,
looking for, the door she had entered the vehicle in shut behind her. And because this is a police SUV, the back seat was designated for suspects. And so the back two doors did not open from the inside. And there was a very thick partition separating the back.
But why'd she die though? It's only been like, what, 4 hours? Ain't that what he said? He went in, went to sleep for 4 hours. Why would she? I'll just be sitting in the back of the car playing on my phone.
Seat from the front seat, so Clara could not just reach over the seats and honk the horn to get someone's attention. And Clara did not have her cell phone, so she couldn't call anyone for help. And when she screamed out for help to somebody out on the road,
no one will hear you.
Her screams were severely muffled, and the back windows of this police car were heavily tinted, making it extremely difficult to see that there was a person in the back seat of this car. So for 4 hours, Clara desperately screamed and kicked and punched and did everything she could to try to free herself from the situation she was in. All the while, the temperature inside the car continued to go up. The SUV was parked in full sunlight, no shade whatsoever, and the temperatures that day were over 90 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh shit,
so
she
by the
died.
time Clara was ultimately discovered, the inside of that SUV had effectively become an oven. Aristides ran over to his vehicle and he pulled his wife out and he started doing CPR on her, but it was too late. She had died of heat stroke. Her death was ultimately ruled an accident.
I bet he felt so shitty for that. Oh my God.
On May 22nd, 2021, a father and his young son were out for a walk in their small suburban town just outside of Barcelona, Spain. When they reached their downtown, they were going to turn around and walk back home, but the boy pleaded with his father to make a quick stop at the old theater. The reason the boy and many other kids in the town loved going to this old theater was because out front of it was this huge papier-mâché statue of a dinosaur, a Stegosaurus to be exact.
Oh, that's
and so
cool
after a little
shit.
bit of convincing, the father finally agrees and they start heading in that direction. After they turned the corner and could actually see the dinosaur statue, the boy took off running while the father just stayed back and walked leisurely, watching his son the whole time. And as he's watching his son, he can see he gets right up to the statue, and then the boy just kind of suddenly stops and stares at something on the bottom of the statue. And so the father notices his son has seen something peculiar enough to make him stop and stare, and so he yells to his son, "Hey, what do you see?" And the son just points at the back right leg of the statue. And so the father,
Is it a naked homeless man? And I ask because whenever I was little, there was this park across, like literally, there was our house. We had a fenced-in yard and stuff, and walk out the fence, you had a little bit of grass, you had a sidewalk, a little bit more grass, the road. the other side of the road. Then you had more grass, another fence, and you had a big ass park. And I would go to this park all the time, and there was dinosaurs there too, but there was, plastic or whatever. There was like the same stuff like the step 1 and step 2 and step 3 shit are made out of. If you got kids, you know what I'm talking about. And I couldn't have been very old at all. My grandmother and grandfather took me over to the park because my dad worked nights, my mom was working mornings, dad was asleep. I was pretty well there by myself. So grandma and grandpa came and got me because it was the weekend. We hit flea markets and stuff like that. So we was at the park, and I go running over to get on top of the 3-horn, that Triceratops. It was my favorite one to get on because like I could sit there and hold on to its hold on to its horns and pretend like I was riding like, a horse or something, or a bull. It's like, yeah, I don't know. That was my favorite one. I went running up to it, and there was like just this homeless man, naked from the waist down, just enjoying himself a little too much. I'm just saying, like, it happens, bro.
Thinks this is really weird, so he jogs up to his son and he crouches down right next to him and looks in the direction his son is pointing. And at first, the father believes all his son is pointing at is this fairly obvious crack on the outside of the statue on the back right leg. And he's thinking his son has just noticed that the statue is kind of falling apart. But as he's looking,
right, look, it's like, Daddy, the dinosaur is broken. What do we do? Ah!
At this crack that his son is pointing at, he realized his son was not pointing at the crack. He was pointing at what was behind the crack, what was inside the dinosaur statue. And when the father realized what he was looking at, he grabbed his son, stood up, and ran in the other direction and called emergency services. A few minutes later, the police and fire department
definitely a homeless man, naked from the waist down, enjoying himself a little too much.
show up in front of this old theater. They get out and they go up to the statue and they confirm what's inside this back right leg. Afterwards, they go to their trucks and they get out chainsaws. Eventually, they were able to carve a big enough square on this back right leg that they were able to remove the thing that the father and the son had seen originally, and that was a dead man's body. Not much is known about this dead man, except that he was a 39-year-old man.
Did the dinosaur actually come alive and eat the motherfucker?
Who his family had reported missing a couple of days before he was actually found. While we don't know this for sure, it's believed he decided to crawl inside the statue when he realized the belly of the dinosaur was movable. Now, it's not entirely clear how he figured that out. Either the belly was already moved and he saw the opening and so saw the opportunity to crawl inside for some reason, or he was poking and prodding at the statue and discovered the belly was movable, moved it aside, and then again seized the opportunity and crawled inside. But either way,
I probably would have done the same thing. Like, I'm going to climb into a dinosaur and I am taking a picture. Bill 5000 live from the inside of a long-necked dinosaur. How's everyone doing today? Be fucking amazing.
The man crawled inside the statue, and then once he was in the dinosaur, his phone slipped out of his hand or slipped out of his pocket, and then instead of falling out of the dinosaur onto the ground, it fell inside the dinosaur and slid down the inside of the statue until it fell into the bottom of the bottom right-hand leg. And so the man decides to go after his phone, and so on his belly, he slides over to the back right leg, and then he begins lowering himself head first into the leg, reaching for his phone. And so as he's kind of slowly lowering himself down, using his legs to pin himself inside the statue, he gets closer and closer, and he's almost about to grab his phone when his feet lose their grip and he slips and falls headfirst all the way to the bottom of this back right leg. The space he was in was so tight, he was not able to turn himself around and climb up and out again. In fact,
he's stuck like Chuck, bro. Oh, fuck.
In fact, it was so tight, he could barely move. His arms were pinned by his side, and so he couldn't use them to even push himself back up and out. And because he could not bend his legs, he could not...
Yeah, and I bet if it was that tight to where He wasn't like able to like even move his arms. He probably couldn't even scream out for help because he couldn't even take a deep enough breath, bro. Fuck.
Not use his legs to pull himself back out again either. And so this man most likely began screaming for help, but for whatever reason, nobody heard him. And so after what must
he probably couldn't take a deep enough breath. Like if it was that tight, like you have to be able to. He can't go.
have been several agonizing days, the man finally just died. His autopsy has not been made public, so we don't know for sure what actually killed him, although one could speculate he died of either dehydration,
heat exhaustion, dehydration, or lack of oxygen. Suffocation. That word. Holy shit.
Or perhaps asphyxia from being trapped in
that word, that sounds even fucking better. Asphyxia, right? That's where you just
this really tight space where his chest may not have been able to expand all the way,
that word.
So he would have eventually suffocated. Following the gruesome discovery, the dinosaur statue was removed from the front of the old theater.
That's probably a very good idea.
In the early 1980s, John Harder was the classic, athletic, popular kid at his high school in Delaware, Ohio, which is a relatively small town just outside of the state's capital. But unlike most stereotypes that paint high school jocks as being these total jerks, that bully people and they're kind of stupid, John was none of those things. He was incredibly friendly and very warm-hearted and seemed to get along with everyone. John also was known for having a great sense of humor. In particular, he liked to play these kind of
I hated bullies in school. Like that's something I just couldn't deal with. Man, life is shitty enough having to go to school and be just treated like shit because you're a kid, but you got other dumbass kids out there trying to make your life even worse. Man, fuck that. Man, I'm a firm believer. Just help your fellow person get through this shitty life as easy and as well as possible. Don't make things harder. There's no point. Life is hard enough on its own without some dick out there making it 10 times worse.
Of harmless pranks that would make people smile, like the time he very enthusiastically joined the cheerleaders during a high school pep rally, despite not actually being a cheerleader himself. John was set to graduate from high school on June 5th, 1983, and his plan was to study accounting at Kent State University the following year. A few weeks before his graduation, John's high school began selling these tickets to a grad night at a huge amusement park called Kings Island. Kings Island was located about 2 hours west of John's high school, and it was home to dozens of roller coasters, water slides.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'm more of a Six Flags person. Cedar Point. Never been much of Kings Island, but whatever.
And many other attractions. During their so-called grad nights, this amusement park would shut down their public operations and not let anybody into the park that did not have these special student tickets that they gave to local area high schools. John, who was 17 years old at the time, was very excited at the idea of going to this grad night, and so he went and purchased tickets along with about 20 other students from his high school. At about 3:30 p.m. on Friday, May 13th, John and the other students who had bought grad night tickets met up outside of their high school. While this was a school-sponsored trip, the students were responsible for driving themselves to the park. And so after all the students were accounted for, they all piled into a couple of their cars and they began their journey to the park. After a few stops along the way to get food and go to the bathroom, the students finally arrived at the park at about 7 p.m. And on the drive, John, who had been a passenger, had drank half a bottle of rum and about 3 to 6 beers. And so when he got out, he could barely stand. He was so drunk. And so the students made their way over to the front.
He said it was getting a little chilly out. He wanted to be nice and toasty. Just so happens his toast got buttered.
Gate, they showed the attendant their grad night ticket, and they were allowed inside. And surprisingly, despite it being this special night where only people with these tickets were allowed in, it was still pretty crowded. There were lots of students that apparently wanted to come to this event. Once John and the rest of the students from the Delaware High School had come inside the park, there was no rule that they had to stick together for the duration of their time there, and so they all kind of broke into their separate groups and went their separate ways. In John's particular group was his girlfriend Pam, and for the first hour they were in the park park together, all they did was bicker and fight. Onlookers would say John looked visibly upset and very emotional and very drunk. By 8:30 p.m., when John's group had gotten in line for this roller coaster, John was now openly saying, "I don't want to be here anymore, I just want to go home." It was pretty obvious he was still just mad at Pam, and that's why he was saying all this, was just trying to make Pam feel bad. And so some of the group members told John, just, "Hey man, calm down, you're overreacting, just try to enjoy this ride, and then afterwards we'll get some food, it'll be fine." But it was pretty clear that John was really worked up and seemed incapable of having a good time at this point. But regardless, John and the rest of the group, they got on this ride at about 9 p.m. and then after the ride was over, they disembarked and they walked away from the ride to regroup and figure out what was next. And they're looking around and John is nowhere to be found. And so after waiting for a few minutes and actually walking around looking for him, they decided that, you know what, he was really upset before he got on this ride. He probably just wanted to walk away and be by himself for a bit. I'm sure we'll see him later in the night. So John's group, without John, just continued going.
Sometimes that's the best thing to do, is just you know you're not going to get in no better mood, and sometimes you just got to pull yourself away. So I get where they're coming from, but I would have definitely had someone like close, like 10 feet away, just, where's he going now?
Going around the park, going on different rides, and for the next few hours, they kind of forgot about John. It wasn't until the end of the night, when over the loudspeaker, the park officials said, "Okay, we're closing the park now," that they started walking out and wondering where John was. And they were convinced, you know what, I'm sure he's back at the cars. He's probably waiting for us because he just wants to go home. And so they leave the park, they get out to their cars in the lot, and John's not there. And so at this point, the group's starting to get a little bit concerned because no one knows where he is. They're meeting up with the other groups from their high school. No one's seen John. And so they're all just kind of staring at the front gate, waiting for John to come out, but he doesn't. And then eventually the lights in the park start shutting down and the security guard comes up.
See, when I drink, and I drink a little too much, I'm a wanderer too. He's probably lost.
Front and locks the front gate. And that's when the group knew they had a problem.
Or sleep next to the toilet. I don't ask. It happens.
Extensive investigation by police, this is their best guess as to what happened to John. After John and his small group rode that roller coaster around 9 p.m.,
After the police investigate, this is what happened to John? Like, oh. That set of words just instantly chilled me the fuck up. Oh God, what happened to John? Do we want to know?
John very quickly disembarked the ride before anybody else in his group could see him, and then John stumbled his way towards the replica Eiffel Tower that this park was famous for. This tower stood at about 300 feet tall and was built to be an exact replica of the Eiffel Tower in Paris, France, but this one at Kings Island was only a third the size. It had 3 elevators that went up
that and drunk. Oh God, he's dead.
The center of the structure, and the elevators would stop at a 50-foot platform and a 275-foot platform where guests could look out and have a great view of the park. Well, today, the only way to access these two
No. I am not going 50 feet up in the air for not a motherfucking person. I'm definitely not going 275 feet up in the air for not a motherfucking person. God built me 5'11" for a fucking reason.
Viewing platforms is through these elevators. At the time John was at the park in 1983, the park actually had a flight of stairs that went from the ground all the way to the very top of the tower that went right up the middle of the structure, and the public was allowed to take these stairs all the way up to the first platform, that 50-foot platform. And while the stairs did actually continue beyond that, up to the 275-foot platform, the public was not allowed to go any higher on the stairs than that first platform. And so if you took these stairs, once once you got to the 50-foot platform, there would be a big fence right on the stairwell preventing you from going any farther. And it says authorized personnel only, don't go any farther. And so the only people that would walk up those additional flights of stairs were staff that had a special key. When John stumbled his way over to the base of this replica tower, he did not get on an elevator. Instead, he took the stairs. So he made his way up to the 50-foot platform.
Like drunk
and then
people
when
would,
he got
yeah.
to this 6-foot tall gate preventing him from going any
A drunk person's not going to take an elevator. It's going to make them go. They going to want to take the stairs. And if you've ever been drunk on an elevator, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That motion you have, like whenever you hit your floor or you go to take off and you go down like that, or you've hit your floor and you go. Happens to me every time.
farther, he just climbed up and over it and continued walking up the stairs, and nobody stopped him. He finally came to a stop just below the 275-foot mark, and so he's on the stairwell, and at this point he turns and faces the inside of the tower. It's all these metal beams all over the place, and he climbs over the railing of the stairs he's on, and he climbs onto this narrow beam that's actually a part of the support structure of this tower.
He's the ballsy drunk motherfucker. Just fuck that, man. My stupid ass ain't getting on nothing like that. If I'm drunk, I'm smarter than that. I might be stupid drunk, but I'm smart enough not to die.
Tower, and he grabs onto the beam above him and just begins walking along this beam towards the center of the tower where the 3 elevator shafts are. Now, there's no safety net on either side of John, so if he slips and falls, he's falling hundreds of feet to the ground. And if he keeps walking and actually gets into the elevator shaft, there's nothing protecting him from being struck by one of the elevators, because the people who built this tower were not thinking about.
Let me ask you a question. What kind of elevators are they? Like, are they this was before I was born. Oh, these are going to be some old school elevators. He might be fucked either way.
People walking on these exposed beams hundreds of feet up into the air. This is a totally dangerous and unauthorized area. But John just continues shimmying across this beam until he does get to the middle of the tower, and now he's literally standing looking down into the elevator shafts. And as he's most likely looking around, admiring where he was, one of the elevator cars below him began to start moving. To understand what happens next, you need to have a rudimentary understanding of how this elevator worked. A large metal rope was attached to the top of the elevator car, and from there it was thread up the elevator shaft all the way to the top, where it was fed through a pulley that was anchored to the ceiling, and then that rope
It's a counterbalance elevator.
was fed right back down the shaft to the bottom, where it was attached to a counterweight. A counterweight is just a large heavy weight that's designed to balance this elevator car on this pulley system.
Yeah.
Without the weight, the elevator car would just slip off of that pulley. And so anytime the elevator car moved up, the counterweight would move down, and vice versa, making sure that car was always balanced. And so John is standing right on the edge of this elevator shaft, presumably just kind of looking around, admiring where he was, when down below him, that elevator car starts to move, and it starts to actually descend away from John. And so the car itself is not necessarily a threat to John. However, its counterweight is, because if the car is going down, its counterweight is going up, and it's right in the path of John. And so as John is leaning out over the shaft looking around, this counterweight comes screaming up and picks him off of the beam he's on and carries him up into the shaft. The impact on John was so strong that it's believed he was actually impaled on some of the exposed metal wiring on top of this counterweight, and he got totally tangled up in all of the cables on top of there. And so as John is desperately trying to free himself, the elevator operator, there was always a staff member inside of these elevator cars, he actually noticed when John got stuck on the counterweight. But of course, this worker would have no idea that's what it was. They would later recall it just felt like the car suddenly jumped. And so this worker, fearing that something had gone wrong with the elevator car itself, he decided he would ride it all the way to the bottom, let everybody get out, and then ride back up to the top totally empty to make sure that the car actually worked.
With
before
dude
allowing
on
people
the
back
counterbalance
on.
the
So
whole
worker went to the
time?
ground, everybody got out, he closed the door.
Is the motherfucker on the counterbalance the whole time? So when it goes back up, it's going to come back down. Everyone that's down there is going to see his fucking mangled body, bro.
He began
Or do you think you'll get to see it as he pass?
his ascent. He got to that first platform at 50 feet, no issues. He got about 10 feet above that first platform, so at about 60 feet, when all of a sudden he hears an unbelievably loud thud on the roof of his elevator car, causing his car to immediately come to a stop. And then
He fell
blood
off?
began pouring over the sides of the car over the windows. After getting stuck on the counterweight, John probably did everything he could to try to free himself, but he just couldn't do it. However, when that elevator worker decided to go back up again to test the capacity of the elevator car, it reversed the direction of the counterweight that John was stuck on. And so as that car was going up, John began going down, and it was on this descent that parts of John's body must have been dangling off of this counterweight, and they must have struck one of the beams as he was going down, and that beam effectively pried him off of whatever he was stuck on and threw him over the edge into the center of the shaft. And so John would fall 200 feet and he would land on top of that elevator car, dying instantly. The park was very quick to block off the ride and the whole scene and got police involved very quickly. So only a very small number of guests and employees were aware an accident had even happened, and very few of them were aware that it had been a fatal accident. As for the police, they knew they had a dead body, but they had no way to identify the body. There was no ID cards on John, and so they had no way to let his friends know that were in the park or to tell his family. And so it wasn't until that night, when John's friends are out in the parking lot waiting for John to come out again, that they got really worried, and they went up and spoke to a security guard at the front of the park. And that security guard, after hearing their story, would tell them that actually there had been an accident in the park and there was a body, and the police are still trying to identify this body. And so maybe you guys want to go over to the hospital and see if it's your friend. So sure enough, the friends went to the hospital, and they would confirm that the body was John Carter. To this day, no one knows for sure why John did what he did. Some say he was just drunk and it was a dumb decision that led to his death. Yeah. Others say he was suicidal, but many of the people that were close to him say, no way, he was not suicidal. And other people say, you know, John, he loved attention, and so perhaps this was a dangerous stunt gone too far. But regardless of his reasons, John had clearly intentionally entered an area that was off limits, and it got him killed. So that's going to do it, guys.
Wow. Thank you so much for the suggestion, my friend. That's fucking crazy. Oh, like I've lived in Ohio my whole life. I love hearing just crazy ass stories from Ohio. I do. It just puts a smile on my face. Lets me know I'm not the craziest thing here. All right. I really enjoyed today's story. If y'all enjoyed today's story as much as I did, please go down there, hit that thumbs up while you're down there going over, and subscribe to the Bill 5000 Nation. It's a big old subscribe button. Just push it, bro. And if you really want to do something while you're down there, go on over and ding that bell, because that bell will let you know anytime I do a premiere. And if you want, I'm always there during the premieres, and I will always chat with you over in the live chat on the other side of it, or down below, depending on the device that you're using. And if you really want to support the channel, the link is in the description. I buried it all the way down the bottom. It'll take you straight to my store, where we have some of the best merch out there. If you don't believe me, check it out for yourself, and then you can decide from there. Yeah. As always, be good to one another. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Yeah, I'm sticking with Six Flags, bro. Fuck all that shit. Like,